Hey there, scholars. My name is Ira McIntosh, and this is Hypothesis. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to my office. It's time for another episode of Hypothesis, and boy, is today's episode a doozy. I hope you are ready for some deep conversations about what it should look like for staff and faculty and administration to actually support students within the university system, what the university system could look like moving forward, and what COVID 19 did to the student population, both younger and moving through college, and what that means for the future. This is. This is a deep one. Before we get into that, though, I just want to thank you all for being here. This journey has been amazing so far, and I really want it to go as far as possible. So please, when you get the chance, share, like, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast everywhere you find it. Just a reminder that when you listen, please download the episodes because it doesn't count the numbers on the back end unless the episodes are downloaded. So while I don't want to monetize this too much and have ads all over the place, that's just not my style. I'd really appreciate those numbers because that'll tell me when I need to start a Patreon or if I need to do extra content that could help support what we're doing here. Because this is a community that we're forging. It's not just a podcast. It's not just me talking at you. Hopefully these are conversations that are resonating with you and will ring true through the ages and bring light to issues that maybe haven't been talked about before, and will get people excited about education and interested in pursuing academia, and really just to realize that academics are not stuffy, stuck up old people, but we're nerds. We're just nerds. That's all we are. So if you like what we're doing here and you want it to keep going, please make sure you tell your friends, share on your socials. We just started a new TikTok account, so follow us at Hypothesis Pod on TikTok. We're putting out some extra content that's not just clips from the podcast, so check that out and follow us there. Let's just make this the best community that we possibly can. So thank you again to those who are already listening, and I look forward to many, many more episodes with you. That being said, today's guest is Mannie Brown. Mannie is an openly queer educator, curriculum developer, and advocate committed to creating inclusive, affirming learning spaces. Based out of Winchester, Virginia, Mannie brings a thoughtful, intersectional approach to gender studies, LGBTQ+ education, and social justice, with a deep passion for helping people think critically about identity, community, and liberation. Outside of their work in education, Mannie is heavily involved in the community as a drag entertainer, merging their passions for education and community together. One of her favorite quotes by Edwin Elliot reads, "By being yourself, you put something wonderful in the world that was not there before." This is a mantra she has incorporated in her profession, academic research, and community passions as a way to build bridges between all aspects of the university and community she serves. Everyone, please welcome to the pod, Mannie Brown. I don't like turning on the heat in my apartment unless I absolutely have to, just because, it costs money. And so I pulled out my sweatshirt and I have my tea and I'm just like, okay, we're just going to snuggle into this conversation. It's going to be great.
Comfy cozy, that's always the way to go.
Exactly. I have a feeling that even if and when I become a professor, I'll probably end up being that way as well. So just to get started, could you tell me a little bit about your academic journey and why you chose to get degrees in what you got degrees in and what you're doing now and all of that fun stuff?
Okay, so my academic journey, I feel like has been pretty straightforward. A lot of times I like to say that growing up around educators, I sort of fell into that role very naturally because it's what I saw and felt very close to growing up and within my just own journey and development. So I have a background in sociology with a strong focus on gender studies and sexuality specifically. So a lot of my expertise and research is grounded in gender and sexual identity. From there, I went on to get a master's in higher education leadership to work in the university setting and the administrative side of things, but also wanting to have the opportunity to be in the classroom and utilize that gender studies background specifically. So I utilize both degrees in my current work here at Shenandoah University in Winchester, Virginia, where I work in the Office of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity as the Associate Director for Gender and Sexuality Resources. And I also teach part-time in the College of Arts and Sciences in the Gender Studies Department.
That's awesome. I mean, it's awesome that there's a school that has all of those departments and has the resources uh for their students, but also just awesome that you were able to get a job doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting because over the last year and a half, there's been this attack, to be straightforward, on we refer to it as IDE here, so inclusion, diversity, and equity. But the fight continues, and our students in this area specifically need these resources. And so it's fulfilling knowing that we're working to continue to meet those needs while also sort of having to support other institutions that are being forced to take these resources away. It's that
Mm,
dichotomy of like wanting to support, but also not wanting to, I don't want to say gloat, but like put it in their face that we're still able to
yeah.
operate as quote unquote normal.
I mean, so is that a private institution then?
We are private, yes.
That makes sense then why you would be able to have some of those resources as opposed to a public university that's dealing with the government issues right now.
Yeah, and even in the private sphere, if, like the board specifically of the institution is wanting to further align with what the federal government is expecting from institutions of higher education, that also puts
Yeah.
puts things into a different perspective or context too. So luckily there's support and conversations continuing to be had in multiple arenas of the university.
Well, in that kind of work at a university, I obviously was a grad student at my last school, but I was the graduate representative on the diversity council at the school that I just graduated from, the American University of Paris, and it was such an odd it was such an odd job to have as someone who was out of academia for 10 years and worked as a drag queen and was just like in in my little queer bubble, and having all of these kinds of conversations all the time, and of course conflicts arose often, but at least you knew there was a base layer of knowledge that you could work with in topics around equity and diversity. To then coming to the higher education system and sitting down, there were two students. There was one undergrad, one grad, and then two faculty members and two staff members on the council, and just having some of these conversations and realizing there are things that people have never come up against before and never had to think about before, and just like raising my hand in meetings and being like, should we maybe address this and like think about how we're addressing this? um it's especially in institutions, higher education institutions that have a lot of traditions behind them. There's a lot of history with them and ways things are done. It can come as kind of a subordinate. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It can make people in power think that you're trying to go over their heads, or tell them that they're stupid if you're like, hey, what if we think about it this way? um they're tough conversations to have in that setting.
Yeah, and funny enough, I think those aspects or perceptions of challenge to those structures to be interesting because especially over the last two or so decades, there's been this push to diversify the college student body. But there's also been ongoing conversation about how when we are diversifying the student body, are we providing them the resources that they need to be successful and to thrive? And
Mm.
a lot of students who have gone through that development process or even spent their time in higher education would tell you that they do what they can, but they're still missing the mark in certain areas. Um, and Yeah, it's just interesting to put it into perspective that way. Because even thinking about a diversity chair position on student government as an example, essentially that representative is serving as a form of like not human relations, but like um team relations almost as like a HR representative. They're making sure that you are crossing all of your T's and dotting all of your I's in terms of understanding the cultural competence of everyone in the space and making sure that they are seen, heard, and supported, as well as valued. But a lot of times that reinforcing or putting that uh, check and balances in place almost creates that or per, projects that tension of that challenge to that structure because it's giving everyone a voice, whereas historically these spaces have been designed to maintain the voiceless, and I find that very interesting.
Have you noticed? So you're at a school in Virginia now, but you got your master's in San Diego,
I did.
which, by the way, the University of San Diego is like, I stayed there overnight once during the summer, uh, and that campus is just like, I hold every other campus to that campus because it's so beautiful. I am very jealous. Um, but what are these conversations? How are these conversations different? Are they different between the East Coast and West Coast,
Mm.
especially a city like San Diego against a state like Virginia, like the very two different cultures?
That's such a great question, and it's something I think about constantly is just how geographical differences absolutely change the way in which folks interact with aspects of equity and justice. Um, I grew up in Cleveland in the Midwest, so a lot of
Mm.
what I learned and I've come or become, uh, I don't want to say used to, but what I interact with the most is sort of on the basic level of what is equity and inclusion and justice and how can we get there. Whereas the conversations I was having in San Diego were moving beyond the surface, beyond the basic level of knowledge, and taking it to the more theory into practice steps. And I think that's one of the things that I miss because for a long time in my role here, I felt as if I was starting from scratch, having to
Mm.
build up um, a system of support that understands where we need to be if we want to continue to uphold the standard of success and thriving that we're setting. Whereas back in San Diego, I was finding myself um, questioning, okay, what's next? We're here, we've addressed this. What is next in that process in order to sustain the success and the thriving that we've been able to commit to? So I think that difference is one of the things that I picked up very quickly. Um, and I'm currently working on helping folks within my sphere of influence here move beyond where we are on the surface level so that we can get to that point of putting theory into practice.
Yeah, I noticed some of that, especially. So I was living in New York for 5 years before I moved over here to Europe. And of course, all of my friends were gay. I like most of my friends were also doing drag just because that's how that world works. Most people didn't even know my government name at that point. And so I was used to having those kind of deeper, more philosophical conversations, if not silly conversations about what
Hmm.
it is to be gay, what it is to be queer, how we function in the world in general. And then moving to Europe, where, or specifically to France, where it's strange because being being gay in Paris specifically is not something people think about. Like they don't
Hmm.
care what your sexual orientation is for the most part. There are some people that are still kind of assholes about it, but for the most part, like I've never felt safer in the world than I have in France being out and proud on the street. Um so in one way it was a lot more freeing just because I didn't feel like I had to be on my guard all the time and figuring out like how to navigate through situations. But on the other hand, because being a queer person is kind of seen as passe, like
Hmm.
they don't have even the basic conversations anymore because it's just like, okay, whatever, we don't care, it doesn't have anything to do with us, let's just move on. Like not in a mean way, but just like, okay, great, why are you telling me all of these things? Let's just get to another point, let's get to the next point. So trying to navigate those cultural differences was wild. Even down to things like we were coming up against, because it was an American school, so most of the student body was from the US, or I'd say like 50% was from the US, 50% from the rest of the world. And all of the American students would have certain issues, like if someone asked them, "Oh, where are you from?" which in the US is a very loaded question, or can be a very loaded
Hmm.
question, but in France is a very common, like first thing you ask is someone's name, and then the next, oh cool, where are you from? Because they actually want to know what country you came over from for whatever reasons, but there isn't a culture of needing to be guarded about that information. And but the American students were hearing those questions and being like, that's so rude, why would you ask me that question? And the French students were like, what do you mean, I'm just trying to get to know you. And so even navigating like the very basest of equity problems became an issue. So I totally get the desire to move past the basics. Is all of that to say, I get the desire to be able to actually get into the nitty gritty and move into the more interesting conversations.
Yeah, and your story brings up a really good point too, because I was in two very different uh types of cities. Right now, the city of Winchester is on a much smaller scale than that of San Diego. Like it, three freeway exits, that's the city, And so, when I transitioned here, I was caught off guard by that very drastic shift in culture and just like mode of living. So I think that plays a role in it too, much smaller and a lot more terrain just in general. Um, oh, there was another point there, and I got sidetracked by literally looking at a map. I in my brain, of course. Um, but yeah, I find that interesting too, the difference in size, city size or type of city. Um, because I also think one of the things that I reflect on a lot too was the availability of prominent queer spaces out in San Diego. Because
Mm.
here, we have the occasional drag show once a month in the city itself. And it's a drag bingo every third Friday. It's coming up on Friday, actually. Um, and then the nearest gay bar is about 50 minutes out in yeah, just 50 minutes out in the state of Maryland. And it's like, I believe it's considered the oldest gay bar in Maryland. However, it's in the middle of nowhere. Again, it's about an hour out. And so you have to really commit to going out there if
Mm.
that's something you want to do. And you also have to make sure that you're doing so safely, because we do not
Mm.
drive under the influence. But
Yep.
I I've struggled for the many years that I've been here to find a community because I was so used to a very vibrant nightlife grounded in queer culture, and just the availability of things to do centered around like queerness and things of that nature. And moving across the country on your own is already difficult enough. But struggling to find that community that you're looking for, that will contribute to your own individual thriving is one of the things that like I really struggled with once I started to really settle down here. So I think that that plays a role in those differences as well.
So something that I kind of latched onto in your thesis that you sent over was in the conclusion you were talking about how your experience made you not want to take part in academia for a while, which I totally get. And but you mentioned something that was so relatable to me that you wanted to take time to uh dig back into your entertainer roots and take time just to experience more and experience life to see if this is really what you wanted to do. And that really resonated with me because that's what I did as well. I took 10 years between my first master's degree and my second master's degree just because my first one I really did because people told me to do and not because I
Mhm.
wanted to do it. And that's when I took time off and started to perform and get to know people and realized, oh, I care more about people and what makes people people than I do about just singing in front of groups of them. Like like
Yeah.
that's and it takes that kind of time.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that in the conclusion because that's one in this moment a good reminder of why I've intertwined both of those aspects of my life. Because at the conclusion of my grad program, I had quit my full-time job. I was working for a nonprofit during the pandemic to just help sustain myself because I already was um, forced to move back to Cleveland from San Diego. So I was finishing my program online, and there was a lot of unhappiness and just a lot of COVID related issues that contributed to that decision. So I was entering or exiting my program unemployed, unmotivated, with zero passion. And I'm grateful for the time that I spent in Cleveland that summer because I reconnected with my community and friends. Um, I was able to determine that I do actively want to work in academia. It just has to start from the ground up again, which is okay. I just have to look for the right opportunity, and luckily, the right opportunity was the first to present itself. So I didn't have to look too far, and I still feel very grateful for that. And I also have to figure out how I can incorporate the aspects of my personal life that bring me joy and happiness so that I don't feel unmotivated or want to leave again because I know that this is what is, I don't want to say what's best for me, but is what is meant for me to, leave the legacy that I ultimately want to leave behind, which is um, foundational research on gender and sexuality, but also something concrete that has my family's name on it. Because
Hmm.
I want our legacy to live on beyond beyond our years. So yeah.
Well, and academia is not an easy place to thrive in.
No, it
Especially
is
if
not.
if it was just about learning and researching and things like that, great. It would be fantastic. It would be fairly easy to find your survival, to find places to thrive. But then you throw admin in on top of it, and you throw the politics of higher education into it, and that's what really kills that passion. Like I'm such a fighter. I'm sure that the provost and the president of the school that I just graduated from are very glad that I'm not there anymore, so they don't have to take any more meetings with me. Um, but just the constant realization that students were not getting what they needed to get, and no one was listening, and when they were listening, it wasn't being translated to them correctly in ways that they knew how to fix. um like it's very easy to complain within academia, and it's much more difficult to say, here's why people are complaining and here are some solutions to that. But that seems to be what your thesis was about, in terms of the relationship between administration and staff and students. What conclusions did you come to through that research?
Yeah. Ultimately, I still believe that in order for an institution to truly commit to the thriving of their students, they have to build that bridge between academic affairs and student affairs. The That bridge just serves more than I think we allow ourselves to see, because oftentimes faculty tend to be under the impression that once the student leaves the classroom, that's the end of their work with that student. But
Mm,
if you are a professor that someone has built a connection and or trust to, they're going to look to you for answers for something. And it's on the professors and faculty to be prepared to handle or support students who need that support or are calling for that support. And for a lot of people, I think folks within academia come across as uh, super independent and sometimes selfish, because that's a very strict boundary that has been
mm,
established throughout the history of higher ed. However, as we have seen through the impact of COVID-19, as well as the destigmatizing of mental health and self care specifically, that role has changed. And
mm,
so faculty have to be willing to adapt to the changes that have been enacted, because the student needs are very different than what they used to be. So yeah, I see that bridge being very important, and I think the more staff that are taking an opportunity to teach part time in their area of expertise, and are working with students in different capacities, help to build that bridge. But faculty also have to be willing to put some of their time in on the student affairs side of things as well. And so there has to be that give and take, and understanding that this is a marriage. We have a shared
yeah.
responsibility. We can't support our children, or in this case our students, by operating in silos. It just isn't possible. And so programs such as the living learning community that I used in my thesis to analyze, or even here at Shenandoah, we have a first year seminar program which operates very
Mhm.
similarly to that living learning community format. It just isn't live on, but it's grounded in a academic space where folks are coming together to talk about things that they have shared interest in, but they also are becoming what we like to call global citizens, because they're interacting with content from a global perspective to create a broader context of the world around them. And a lot of staff within the university teach within the first year seminar program. And sometimes that's the only class or program that they teach within, which is perfect. It contributes to that bridge that's being built. And the first year seminar program here has proven to be a success. And so I think more institutions that adopt a model such as that, or even the model that's presented in my thesis on the living learning community, could really, really do some substantial and foundational work.
I feel like the conversation around students going into college now is, oh, they're not prepared to do this. Oh, they don't know how to write 250 words. Oh, they don't know how to do this. Oh, their handwriting is terrible. Instead of saying, okay, so this is a group of people who didn't have that support they needed for a very crucial part of their education. That's middle school to high school to etc., even elementary school for some. um and so we at least for a while need to shift our thinking from you have to have your shit together in college to, okay, college needs to start training some of these things that we used to train in high school, just because this generation didn't get that. uh and it, by no one's fault, by no teacher's fault, by no student's fault, even by no administration's fault. Like we did the
Mm-hmm.
best we could,
Mm-hmm.
but certain things were missed. uh and that's no one's fault. So we need to instead of looking at it as, oh, they're not prepared, to, okay, how can we help them be prepared?
Mm-hmm.
um and it means that college isn't going to look the same for a while, that we're not going to be expecting professionals ready to enter the workforce and take over the world at 21. We may need to shift our thinking into, oh, maybe 30-year-olds are where where that comes. It's just, and I'm sure as someone who is actively working in that arena, it's frustrating to see students being dragged through the mud for things that are not something that they propagated.
Oh, and that's honestly like the least of it. One of the things I struggle with the most is I have like a strong sense of justice, and a lot of times I struggle with some of the policies we have in place in regards to student conduct. Um, and I mean, from the lens of sociology, there's a lot of language that means a lot of things, and sometimes the policies were just really exclusive. That aside, I have found that there was a really harsh view of students who were completing their higher education within the realm of the pandemic. And this is mostly kind of like post 2022, so like class of 22 and beyond. There was this belief within just my general sphere of influence, specifically with coworkers and supervisors that I interacted regularly with, that just felt as if those students were lost for the cause. They have the tools, they're just using them improperly. And every time I would have a conversation with the student, whether it be conduct related or um, for leadership development purposes, because I oversee a couple of different student leadership positions, I recognize that what they were really looking for is a way to connect with you, the university, and the general like student populace. And what was missing was a method to build that connection that was sort of molded out of the experiences of the pandemic. And over the last few years, ultimately, we've had to brainstorm, try things out, readjust, so forth and so on because of these differences. And we're finally reaching a point where folks are interacting in these social spaces in a way that we are used to. It's no longer solely communicating through a screen or relying on technology to communicate or interact with one another. Um, And so just having to work to make those shifts, um, both externally within the way we operate, but also internally because they've internalized those forms of communication and interactions as, I don't want to say normal, but as the, I was about to say the norm, that's the same thing, but
Hmm.
as what they're just come to
What
be
they
used to.
what they think they should expect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thought occurs to me that it's almost as if and please correct me if this is a wrong assumption, but it's almost as if the students that schools that colleges assume are privileged enough to know how or to get the education needed to keep college at the expectations that were set are no longer privileged, and so they aren't able to hold them to that standard anymore, and they're now having to learn how to communicate with students who are underprivileged for the first time.
Yeah, it's basically like starting from scratch. Um, Ultimately, I would absolutely agree with that. Um, and I would say that in a lot of ways, we've met those demands almost, that demand for change. But there are some pitfalls, which is to be expected when something to that degree or caliber happens, and you're unprepared for it. That's
Mm-hmm.
to be expected. But I think the impact or lasting effects of it all is what we should have focused on more immediately rather than
Yeah.
like how can we get through, well, rather than just how can we get through this.
Well, and it's not even that, oh, well, why didn't they just pay attention when they were having classes over Zoom? It's that their entire lives were disrupted and that their routines were disrupted, and humans are creatures of routine. And so if
Yes.
your routine that you've been doing, I mean, schools are set up to be very regimented. So if that extreme regimentation that you've been going through, say a junior in high school has been going through for 17 years of their life, all of a sudden gets stripped away and they're having to sit in their dining room with their teacher on Zoom doing the same stuff, but just in a completely different setting and a completely different way, the same kind of learning isn't able to happen.
Hmm.
And that's not even bringing up people like me who are tactile learners and oral learners and
Hmm.
need to be in the space where the learning is happening in order for it to sink in. So many
Yes.
people cannot learn just from reading a book or just from having something on a screen, and so they're they're at an extreme disadvantage in that situation then, because not only are they dealing with the same thing that the traditional learners are dealing with, but they're also dealing with the fact that they can't learn in the ways that they're being asked to learn. And so that's why I'm saying that there's so many things that aren't the student's fault, just it's the environment was so shifted that
Hmm.
it throws off the flow state of learning.
Yeah, as someone who's gone through it as both a student and a professional, funny enough, um, I definitely agree with that. If I wasn't paying a astronomical amount of money for that degree, I probably would have. But transparently, I spent about the first 2 weeks after the lockdown just in my bedroom, specifically at my parents' house once I moved back to Cleveland, not talking to anyone, not doing anything, just kind of wanting to make sense of what was
Mm.
happening. Because for the very first time in my life, everything was told to stop. You can't
Yeah.
do this, you can't do that. Otherwise, you could harm yourself and or others. That was very jarring to me. And as you were talking, I couldn't help but question, well, why didn't we take longer as a nation to press pause and figure it out? And the answer that immediately came to my mind was, well, money. Institutions have to keep running in order for them to like operate and things of that nature. And
Yeah.
so to think about, the world shut down March 13th, 2020. For a lot of folks within that next week, we're already on Zoom having class and,
Mhm.
just moving forward as quote unquote normal. And I just think if we would have taken more time to press pause, make sense of everything, and not be so in a rush to get back to normal, um, we would have or would be in better shape ultimately. But I also recognize that just wasn't possible. It could be, but in this day and age in our society, it just isn't for a variety of different reasons. But that's a tangent we can go on for another day. But
Well,
I just wish that pause actually
yeah.
lasted longer.
One of the things that I'm really passionate about is finding, instead of just saying things that are wrong, is finding solutions for things that are wrong. So through your thesis and through your work now, what are some solutions, or at least some tools that we can take from these frustrations that could help us in the future?
So I think the first tool that I would say is like really assess the context of the problem, of the issue, and really think about the various angles that are stemming from it. I think that assessment is going to be crucial as we need all of the information to really kind of like know how to best move forward. Um, I I find that there is still a lot of work that needs to be done in regards to understanding the commitment that needs to be given from multiple sides of the university in order to commit to foundational student thriving. And I think there are a lot of factors that play a role into this disconnection. One of them being like lack of proper compensation. That's actually something I wanted to bring up earlier in regard to one of the points, but compensation does play a role. Folks want to
Mhm.
make sure that they're seeing uh, value in the work that they're doing, and for a lot of folks, that does sometimes equate to money. So that to say, I think context matters in regards to what frustrations lie at any given institution. I know compensation is one of the issues here. Um, Structurally, just going off of that point, um, folks are given more work or responsibilities than they have the capacity for. And so, because we're a mid-sized institution, um, the way that we are structured or designed is to support the size of the university, but our demand sort of like outweighs that design.
I ultimately think I am still, for the most part, searching for a foundational way to address um, address those frustrations or those issues because it's so broad and it's so
Mm.
vast, and everyone also has a different interpretation of what it means to support student thriving. And I think until we are able to get on the same page of what that looks like, then sort of the search for an answer is going to be ongoing. But I think a good place to start, and that's also just my sociological brain talking, is to assess always.
Yeah. Well, and it's it's one of those things where I wish we could just stop everything and be like, okay, let's assess everything without anything else moving forward. Just stop for a second, breathe, figure it out, and then keep going. And we can't do that, unfortunately, because schedules don't allow that. And we have, especially when you're talking about higher education, you have students paying thousands of dollars every year that you need to make sure that their time is used effectively. um and then you have your professors who don't have much time, and on top of teaching are being asked to publish and present at conferences and do all of these other things. So there's just so many excuse me, there's just so many moving parts that have to occur and have to be considered, um that it's hard to find the time to consider all of those at once. But I think we can
Yeah,
do it.
and
I think we can handle it.
I agree. I definitely think it's possible. It'll take a lot of work, and that work I see it broken down into three categories. The first being from like senior leadership of any given team or institution, they have to be willing to commit to this change because once they commit to it, it will sort of trickle down from there. Um, there's also the internal work, so the self having to internally understand why you are expected to build this commitment, but also understanding what you'll be receiving from it as well. And then lastly, I think it's from the students themselves and recognizing the work that they have to put in order to make it to the next step in their journey as a human outside of the realm of higher education. And I also think it's important for staff and faculty to be realistic with students and let them know that sometimes this arena of the world isn't the best place for you. If you're continuously finding yourself being unsupported, or not finding a space that can provide you what you need, maybe that's a sign that higher ed has been, delivered to you as the next best thing, but in reality, there's something else
Mm.
down your path that's better meant for you, and that is completely okay.
I mean, that's a message I wish, especially in America, I wish we put out there more, that college isn't for everyone and not everyone is for college. Like
Yes.
it's so sold to Americans that you have to have a college degree in order for anything to happen for you. And that just really isn't true. It really isn't true. And there are
Nope.
so many, I mean, there are trade schools, there are community colleges that are, the education is just as good, it's just not the same length of time. um there are apprenticeships, there are mentorships, there are all sorts of things that people can do that don't require you to go to college. And academia is not something everyone's going to be good at. It is absolutely a skill.
Yeah, and I think it would be better if we started framing it in a way where we understand that our degrees are merely, I don't want to say just, but they serve as a good networking tool because you get to talk about your expertise, you get to talk about the values that have been instilled um, into you by your institution of learning. And so if we frame it as this is the next step in your journey to understand how to network in the real world, to get the opportunities that you're seeking, okay, great. Rather than this is what you need to do if you want to make money and get a good job. Or even like for my sake, the main reason I went into higher education was to build a legacy ultimately, and that does
Yeah.
like play a role for people too. So I think there's some reframing that needs to happen, but I'm unsure if that will ever take place because, well,
Mm.
actually, I take that back. Considering a lot of professional degrees are undergoing a change process currently. And
Yeah,
so there's
for better or for
that's a
worse.
conversation that definitely I think will need to be revisited. But I think
Mhm.
there's some reframing that could happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you were saying, I have long said that education needs to be framed as the end and not as a means to an end, in that learning is not something that you do just so you can go out and be a quote unquote useful member of society. Like if you are going to college to get a degree, you need to see that as your job for the next 4 years. If you're going to get a
Yes.
master's, that is your job for the next 2 years or whatever. Like if you're wanting to get a PhD because you're insane, that is your job for the next 5 to 20 years, depending on the school you go to. Like that is the framework that it needs to be seen as. It's not this like gone are the days when you could say, okay, I'm going to go and get a degree in psychology and then become a therapist right out of school. Gone are the days where you could go and get a business degree at Harvard and immediately be a CEO. Even the CEOs are having trouble finding jobs. Like it's
Mhm.
not just a poor people problem anymore. It's not that idea of what a degree can do for you is antiquated, and we need
Mhm.
to see the degree as something that someone can go into if they see no other course for their life that will make them happy. It's just like with drag. When people would come up to me and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing a drag queen, about being a drag queen, do you have any advice for me? And I would always say, if you could see yourself doing anything else, don't do it. Like
Oh.
if this is the only thing that's going to make you happy, go for it, because it's going to be a lot of money out of your pocket. You're not going to see a lot of return. It's going to be hell on your body. It's going to cause relationships to rupture. Like it is a beautiful thing, and it is a valid form of art, and I've learned a lot about myself by doing it and created a community that I loved through it. Um, but that's why I don't do drag anymore, is because I now see other things in my life that I would so much rather be devoting my time to. But for a long time, that was the thing that I devoted my time to, and I was happy to do that. So uh I think college is the exact same way. If you can see yourself doing anything other than college, if all you can think about is backpacking through Europe for a year or 5 years, or just traveling somewhere, do that instead. Like
Mhm.
don't go to college because you're not going to be happy. You're not going to want to go to class. And I think that's why we have this issue with students just not wanting to go to class. Like I get it. I don't blame them for not wanting to go to class. Like you get to college because you're told it's what you're supposed to do. You see what college is like in movies. You expect it to be fun and parties and all of these things, and then you realize, oh, I have to get up at 8 a.m. every day and go to a class,
Mhm.
and then you don't want to go. And I get that, and that's just a sign that that's not where you're supposed to be right now. If you cannot do it, and I had one of those situations too. My sophomore year of college, I failed 5 of my classes because I just could not get out of bed and go to class. Of course, I was also battling depression and all of these other things, but like
Mhm.
truly, I probably should have at least dropped out for a year, regrouped, and gone back. I pushed through because that's what us millennials were told we should do, is just suppress our
You'll
feelings
get
and
through
do.
it.
Yep, you'll get through it. You'll be fine. Um, but yeah, if you cannot see yourself enjoying writing papers and doing homework and being beholden to multiple authority figures every single day of the week, maybe that's not your path, and that's okay. And it's very okay.
Yeah, and I think there needs to be just more real conversations like that. And um, I think it will save a lot of people a lot of money, but also a lot of time. Because
Mm,
that's the one thing we can't get back is time. And many people waste a lot of time going through school and it not even provide the outcome that they were looking for, sadly. So yeah, I think the sooner we're able to reframe and be real with folks about it, the better. Um, and I really, really liked how you framed um, the language of like understanding that it's uh, like supposed to get you to that next step, that you are like receiving the tools and the skills from your time in higher ed, that like it shouldn't be viewed as, I don't want to say, okay, you got it, you're done. Here's a job. It's like, okay, here are the skills that will get you or help you be successful in your specific field. However, you also have to do the work to get there. Yeah,
yeah,
like I think that's important.
yeah. Well, on that note, let's pivot and move into the synthesis question. So this is a series of 7 questions that I ask all of my guests. Don't think too hard about the answers, just whatever comes to mind first. So, question number 1 is, what is your typical executive dysfunction and or rest day activity?
Well, other than sleep, I play a lot of Guitar Hero. And I
Mm,
like to practice drag numbers a lot. That brings me a lot of serotonin, but it also helps me focus, funny enough. So yeah, funny enough, both of those have something to do with music, which is a one like yeah, music plays a large role in my life. So I would definitely say Guitar Hero or practicing a drag number.
nice. Yeah, there's nothing better than plugging in your headphones and just lip syncing while you're walking down the street and getting the weird looks from people.
Oh, it's even worse because I play the music out loud and I'm in my office, so it's a fun
uh,
time.
what is your favorite setting for working on your research?
Oh, I love a good cafe. Yeah, I would go to a good cafe, a local cafe, not a chain. There's a local coffee shop in the area called Hopscotch that I go to every now and then to do some research or um, work on building out a lecture for the week or anything of that nature. So yeah, love a good coffee shop. Other than that, if I'm able to, if the weather allows, I like to sit outside at a park as well.
Hmm. What is one thing an advisor has told you that has stuck with you? And this can be good or bad.
An advisor. Oh, funny enough, I was just talking about this with a good friend of mine. One of my first advisors in my professional career in higher education told me that all feedback is valuable, but not all feedback needs to be applied. And
Mm,
that's something that I have kept with me in my back pocket as someone who is prone to rejection sensitivity. I constantly have to remind myself that I don't need to apply this feedback. I can just receive it and let it go.
mm. It's a very it's that's a yoga practice of if a thought comes into your head, you can acknowledge it, but you don't have to spend time with it. You can just let
Mhm.
it move past.
Yeah.
Um, if you could choose any other area of research, what would you choose and why?
I don't know if it would necessarily be research, but I would love to incorporate some aspects of creative writing into my like academia. I've always loved English and creative writing, and I'm a huge fan of like graphic novels and things of that nature. And so, funny enough, I before I go on a tangent, actually, let me stick with the creative writing. I think that it will help my research as well because academic readings can get so dry and very long-winded, and so I think breaking it up with some aspects of creative writing would help. But I'm also thinking too, there could be opportunities to examine uh, aspects of gender and or sexuality within comic books or graphic novels within my research that I have not taken advantage of yet. So that's where that
Mm.
thought went off to.
Honestly, I know of people who are writing dissertations in poetry in poem form and doing all sorts of things with how they present their research. And I would love to see a graphic novel dissertation. Like that would be incredible. And I think
Yeah,
someone should do that. Feel free to whoever's listening, steal that idea, please. Write a graphic
that would
novel
be so
dissertation.
cool.
Um, who is one other academic whose research you really admire?
Wow, that's a tough one. I am going to have to go with I I would just say yeah, like Angela Davis. I think that her
Mm,
perspectives around uh feminism and human behavior are very valuable and very important, and specifically coming from a Black feminist lens really adds a lot of um richness to her work. So I would definitely say Angela Davis for sure.
good. She's incredible. Um, what is a question you've never been able to answer?
There are so many. I'm assuming in regards to academia,
It
or
can
can this just be
take
any
it as you
question?
take it as you will.
Sorry, I take things so literally.
No, you're good.
I guess a question that always sort of like sticks in the back of my mind is if we understand that a majority, if not all, of the identities that we have come to understand are socially constructed, what is stopping us from dismantling those constructions? And I think the reason I can't answer that is because it's a very big question. And
Mm,
realistically, I think we all know the answer. But
yeah.
well, which is like our system relies on those constructions ultimately. But that's something that,
Yeah.
yeah, I think about constantly.
Yeah, and humans like order, and it's really hard to get humans to stop thinking about order.
Mhm.
To the point where we look at clouds and find order. There's no order up there. Leave it alone. Let it
Everything
be.
has to have meaning. We
Yep.
can't just exist. We have to be able
Yep.
to, yeah, identify, pun intended, what something is. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the last question, what font do you wish you could present your research in?
Oh, Georgia, all the time.
Yes. Finally someone says it.
Like I was a Times New Roman girly for a long time, but Georgia over the last like 2-ish years, yeah,
Georgia and Garamond are they're so much more fun to read. They look like a book.
I agree. Yeah.
Oh,
It feels
thank
handwritten, but you know it's not.
yes, yes. And where can people find you online?
Yeah, so online, I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Prof Envy. There's a period in there somewhere, and I'm not sure which account either, actually. So I'll be more specific at some point. But you can find me there or on my drag socials at Emerald Envy with two, if not three Y's at the end.
Nice. Well, thank you all for joining us on this episode, and we will talk to you all later. Bye. A huge thank you again to Mannie for being on the podcast. This conversation was absolutely incredible, and I really enjoyed the chance to get to know you better and get your messages about community and about bridging the gap between students and admin. to the general public. I think it's something that we really need to talk about in academia a lot more, because we talk about the subjects and we talk about the students and we talk about the faculty and the admin a lot, but we don't talk about those spaces between those things. So thank you again for being here and talking with me today. For everyone else, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this. If you would like to ask questions of me or of my guests, you may see them pop up on episodes or answered on our TikTok account or Instagram. Please feel free to submit those questions to us via DM on TikTok or Instagram. That's at HypothesisPod on both. You could also send questions to us via email. That's podcasthypothesis@gmail.com. Or you can send in an audio message to us on SpeakPipe. That's speakpipe.com/hypothesispodcast. That's speakpipe.com/hypothesispodcast. And you could hear your voice on this podcast. So lots of ways to have your voice heard. Please take part in this conversation. As always, you can find the articles that we talked about in the episode on my Substack. That's iramcintosh.substack.com, or just go to Substack and search The Gay Ethnographer, and you will find video, audio, and the articles discussed. You can also follow all of our socials. The Instagram and the TikTok, again, are at HypothesisPod. You can find my personal Instagram at Ira A. McIntosh. I know what my Instagram is. Absolutely. At Ira A. McIntosh. Or my TikTok is at The Gay Ethnographer. Please subscribe, rate, review, and share with your friends. Let's fight misinformation together. Have a wonderful day and go read a book. Bye-bye.